Rishi Sunak today delivered a speech basically kicking off what should have been election fever, but yet again failed to actually call the general election. Instead, he used his rambling speech to try and attack Labour and paint everything as doom and gloom, and just give him another 5 years, and there'll be jam tomorrow. At one point, he even accused Keir Starmer of being a threat to national security, only for a few hours later to have a massive security breach and release all the names and email addresses of people wanting to attend their conference. As he's making his rambling nonsense, I think Sky News was actually trolling him. Harry Cole over at The Sun actually put him on the spot and gave him one of the hardest cold truths, which is probably a sign that The Sun's going to swing behind Labour towards the election, because they know that they're going to probably win. I'll play the full question in a moment, but Sunak clearly didn't like the fact that he was getting called out on the very first question, and what he thought was from a client journalist. Because it doesn't fit with his narrative, he says he doesn't agree with the characterisation. But as he's twisting his question back to his actual narrative, and going about his lies and his falsehoods all unchallenged, look at what Sky put next to him in the little bar to the left side. It did make me chuckle.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Harry Cole from The Sun. You mentioned our secure future and defence spending and security being on the ballot paper. But when the Tories took power in 2010, defence spending was running at 2.47% of GDP. In 2015, after the annexation of Crimea, that fell to 2.03%. Despite your uplift as Chancellor, it's still lower today as a percentage than when your party took office 14 years ago. And it won't hit 2.5% until a long time after the next election. So you talk of all these profound dangers, but aren't you coming to this far too late? And how can voters really believe that your security is safe in the Tories when they look at the last 14 years of spending?
So, Harry, I could just completely reject the premise of what you've said. When the last Conservative government came into office in 2010, the country was bankrupted. Everyone remembers the note that was left, that was no money left. And that government, my predecessors, had to make some pretty tough choices. But they decided, rightly, to prioritise defence spending. And it maintained 2% of GDP since 2010 for a decade, which was the NATO standard that actually the UK pioneered at the summit in Wales in 2014. And if you look at that last 10 years, we have remained one of the few countries in NATO to meet that 2% standard. We've remained the largest defence power in Europe and the second largest in NATO, behind the US. So actually I'm applauding and I'm grateful to my predecessors, including David Cameron, for making that difficult decision. I'm not sure it's a decision that the Labour Party would have made, because they're not making that decision today. And that's the question going forward, is the choice in the future. You've got a party that you've always been able to trust with defence, and you can trust them and trust me when we think about the future, because sadly we are living in the most dangerous time that we've seen since the Cold War, and I believe that the next few years will be one of the most dangerous times our country has ever lived through. An axis of authoritarian states, Iran, Russia, North Korea, China, acting in an assertive way that is threatening our values, threatening our interests abroad and at home in a more interconnected world. And what are we doing to meet that threat? We've made the generational decision to strengthen our national defence and increase defence spending to a new standard. And that's not just all on the come. When I made that announcement a few weeks ago, it was coupled with an instant increase in our defence spending of £500 million to support Ukraine, which, as everyone can see from the news today, is absolutely the right imperative, because an investment in Ukraine's security is an investment in our security. We have peace through strength. We have to restore deterrence, and that's why it's imperative that Putin fails. And the question at the election is that choice. Who can you trust to keep you safe in this more dangerous world? Well, you can trust me, you can trust the Conservatives, because we've made that decision. That requires leadership, it requires us to prioritise defence. That's not easy. There were plenty of people who said, well, you should do other things instead. I don't think that's the right thing for our country. But Keir Starmer's made it very clear that he doesn't agree with that. He doesn't agree that this is a more dangerous time that requires us to invest more in defence. Hasn't matched that pledge. This is someone who supported Jeremy Corbyn, who wanted to scrap the army and leave NATO, that you talk about. And as I said, right now, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, the shadow foreign secretary, and multiple other members voted against our nuclear deterrent. That is the ultimate guarantee of our security. So I actually think that choice is very clear. that it is a more dangerous world. Anyone who's pretending to you that it isn't being straight with the public. And the right thing to do for our country in that environment is to increase more in defence. That's the decision we've made, and I'm confident that the country will agree with it.
Rishi Sunak is very bad at politics, but is there somebody waiting in the wings to take over? Have a look at this video next and tell me what you think. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.